house. Speaking of love, Curtis Mayfield.
Curtis, well, I used to listen to the Impressions, especially when they did Little Brown Boy.
Uh-huh.
And, of course, I heard the earlier songs, even the early one that Jerry Butler was on. I
Mm-hmm.
always liked Curtis Mayfield, the Impressions, because the impression I had of them by listening to their music was it was formidable. It was clean. It was classic. In other words, there was nothing fad about it, like the typical radio or other groups.
Right.
It was serious shit. Curtis
And
was right.
their voices meshed together so well. When you said clean, that actually just completely describes them. Their voice, everything about them was just, it was, oh my God, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Oh my
Well,
God.
it's like the Church of Chattanooga with sophistication of Chicago City, like.
Uh-huh.
It's all those elements mixed together in our migration.
Mm,
Because when we migrated, we still took the roots with us
that's
wherever
right.
we went. Some who to dirt and some hainches, and cutting chickens on doorsteps and talking
Yeah.
about some juju. So I mean, and don't forget the hainches. So so I mean, plus also, Mississippi went straight up. That's in Louisiana, that's to Illinois. Just like North South Carolina, that's New York. Uh,
Mhm.
goes East Coast. So we usually went straight up.
Uh-huh.
When we went north. But Curtis, I listened to them. What's funny is all the people I've been involved with, or for some reason got into a situation with them, by coincidence or by providence, I was listening to them or partaking of them right before it happened.
Uh-huh.
Um, the Impressions, first of all, I was in San Francisco playing with big time Buck White with Oscar Brown Jr. Uh,
Oh, wow.
Fillmore Jr. was the pianist. Merle Saunders was also in the house band. Ted Lange, the bartender from Love Boat.
Oh, are you for real?
Charles Weldon from Roots. All of these actors, this was one of their first plays. Ted Ross, the lion from The Wiz, and
Yeah.
the driver from Arthur, the movie Arthur.
Yeah.
They were all in this play.
Uh-huh.
And it was at the New Committee Theater in San Francisco.
Mhm.
Up the street was the Jazz Workshop. George Duke was there playing with Lil Esther Phillips. My uncle Claire was playing with Cal Jader at the Matador across the street.
Uh-huh.
Basin Street West had Red Fox. The next night was Richard Pryor.
Ah.
Okay. Carol Doda's had opened up on the Tenderloin up there on Broadway.
Mhm.
Polk Street was like Melrose in Los Angeles. It was a little artsy fartsy place. I used to see Santana for free in Golden Gate Park.
What?
Yeah, Slugs was open. A Groove Holmes had a club called Slugs.
Uh-huh.
It was with Oregon trios. We go to Slugs. We go to the Trident, play the Trident in Sausalito.
Mhm.
I mean, this is before Yoshi's and Keystone Corners. This
Uh-huh.
is when the Fillmore was jamming.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is when black folks, wasn't quite into tie-dyed yet.
Yes.
Yeah, and they were still running Haight and Gray Line tours through Haight-Ashbury when I lived there,
Mhm.
And so what happens is I have a night off, or when we got off from the play, which was controversial at the time because that's when Black Panthers were hiding out.
Uh-huh.
This was when there was a lot of Panthers they were either trying to assassinate or do away with. And there was a lot of them hiding out. I remember Kathleen Cleaver came to the play and a bunch of folks like that to see what kind of revolutionary play this was.
Mhm.
It was okay. It wasn't that deep. But at the time, anybody with the afro and raising a fist, took notice.
Right.
We're talking about the end of 67, beginning of 68.
Mhm.
I graduated high school in 67.
Get out of here.
Yeah,
Get out of here.
from LA High. And the day I graduated, I got in the car and went on tour pretty much for the rest of my life. But yeah, that's the year I left Los Angeles. Before I moved back, of course, many times. But
Uh-huh.
After graduation, I remember taking my clothes off, getting in a car, and leaving town.
Mm.
On tour. It was the Exodus tour. Anyway, I'm in San Francisco. I'm at the play. I go up the street to Basin Street. I wanted to see Richard Pryor.
Mm-hmm.
So the musical act, the headline act is Curtis Mayfield and the Impressions. I just listened to them 2 nights before at Ted Ross's house, the guy who played the Lion in The Wiz. I met Andre. He talked to me like that. I'm at his house. So I go see the Impressions. Melvin Jones is on keyboards, who since now I think has passed away. His brother was Harold Jones. So the drummer I used on Unforgettable.
Yes.
He played with Sarah Vaughan. He also played with Count Basie. Yes.
No.
He's from Richmond, Indiana. Harold Jones, famous drummer. His brother was playing organ. He'd been with Baby Huey and the Babysitters.
Baby Huey and the Babysitters.
That was on Curtom Records. Okay, so Melvin Jones was on organ. He also wound up playing the final years with John Lee Hooker. Okay, so Melvin was on keyboards. Lucky Scott was on bass.
Mm-hmm.
Buzzy, I forget Buzzy's last name. Fuzzy on guitar, white guy. Mm-hmm. And then the other guitarist was Sonny Forrest. Sonny Forrest was the original guitarist with Sam Cooke and with Jackie Wilson.
No!
Yeah, a very good friend of David Fathead Newman, the jazz saxophonist from Count Basie's band. Oh. And so the other keyboard player and musical director for that gig was Donny Hathaway.
Oh my Lord. Oh.
So I'm in the club, right? And I'm loving it. Okay. So I hang around on the break. And for some reason, I think either Melvin recognized me or Sonny from somewhere. Mm-hmm. And we had a reason to talk. They didn't sit with the drummer. They couldn't stand whatever drummer they had. Uh-huh. So they said, well, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm down the street at a play. Mm-hmm. I just gotten off the road, living in Columbus, Ohio, and starving in Omaha. Wound up in San Francisco. Everything was great. And then now I'm checking them out and they're saying they need a drummer. Mm-hmm. So I said, well, I got to give a couple of weeks notice. They said, well, you go have to get somebody to replace you right away, because when we go down to LA, we're going to do the Rosie Greer show. We're going to do the Della Reese show. We're going to do this, that, and the other. And also, this is the first time that when the Impressions went and played the Troubadour.
Wow.
That was a big deal to have a black act play the Troubadour. Yeah. That's when Tank and Preston Love's band was the house band at the Whiskey, but black folks didn't go to the Whiskey A Go.
Whiskey A Go. Uh-huh.
So anyway, what happens is they said, we're going to have a sound check tomorrow. So come to the sound check. We won't have the drummer come. Do you know these songs? I said, I know the songs. That's one thing about me. Not that I have a photographic memory, but I have a serious musical memory. Uh-huh. Because I don't consider myself a drummer. Although I've played drums, I'm a trombone player. I'm playing the song. I'm not playing a beat. I'm playing a song. I'm humming the song. If you solo my drum tracks on any recording I've done and turn it up, you'll hear me humming the song.
Really?
I'm playing the song.
Now I'm going to try to find. Okay.
You know, please pardon me. That Rufus record?
Yeah.
That's me counting at the front of it. 1, 2. So anyway, I go sit in with them the next day. And plus, I'd seen them the night before, right? I already knew where the breaks were. I knew how many bars they were going to do the vamp till the end came. Uh-huh. They were amazed at my memory. But at the same time, what they were playing was not Stravinsky.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So I'd come up listening to Stravinsky. So what they were doing wasn't that difficult as far as arrangement was concerned. Mm-hmm. The thing about playing with Curtis or any black act is pocket. Mm-hmm. If you got to catch a groove, if you can't catch a groove, it don't matter how well you play. Okay? So anyway, they thought I was amazing. Mm-hmm. So they offered me the gig. Unbeknownst to the other musicians, I hired on for twice what they made.
Oh.
They didn't know how to negotiate. I negotiated for $350. They were making $150 and change a week.
No.
Yeah. And then when they found out that I made more, they start calling me college boy. And then anytime they needed a raise or road money, I'm the one they'd sent to go negotiate with Curtis. And Curtis was like dealing with a banker. Okay, he squeezed the eagle till it grinned. Okay, all right. So anyway, and also when we play cards with him, when I wound up going on the road with him, we'd play cards. If we beat them in cards, they didn't want to pay us for the week. Oh, they got mad because we beat them at poker. So anyway, and they had a road manager too named Eddie Suter. It was this kind of hustling Negro from Washington D.C., older man, wore the hat that looked like Robin Hood. Zanzibar pants used to be high-waisted Zanzibar pants, matching socks and shoes, same color, with initials on the lapel of his shirt. Okay, right? And then he had a little automatic pistol he'd stick in the pocket.
You better not mess with him.
But one day it went off and it went through his shoe. He almost shot his toe off.
No!
Oh, yes. His name was Eddie Suter. And to top it off, he had a stutter. My name is Eddie Suter. And so what we would do to make him mad is we told him we bet him $1,000 he couldn't say Studebaker. He tried to say it. And then he got mad and chased us around the room and kept patting his gun. And that's when it went off. Poor thing.
That's when it went off?
That's when it went off. Scared the hell out of him. I think he peed his pants. He had to leave the room real fast. Anyway, but the Impressions also had a road manager named Robert Cobbins. He would handle the equipment, and he had been paroled from prison. I think he had been in prison for manslaughter. And Robert was a very nice man, but he couldn't think multiple levels at the same time. And don't jam him with too much stuff, or if he got confused, he might just grab you. Okay? Oh, yeah, Robert. Okay, yeah, but no club owner ever messed with the Impressions with Robert.
Okay, I bet you they didn't.
Well, you kind of had to have that because sometimes you got stiffed.
Yeah.
You know. So anyway, the point is here I joined the Impressions. I get Merle Saunders' cousin Eddie Moore, the great jazz drummer, to take my place with the play. People with the play and Merle Sanders were pissed. Merle Sanders put out a contract on my life after that.
No!
Well, he was mad because that's the same organist that wound up touring with Jerry Garcia from the Grateful Dead. Merle Saunders was a very famous organist in San Francisco. Okay, so anyway, Merle was the band leader when I chose to leave the play. Oscar was pissed. Everybody was pissed that I left.
Oh my God.
So the very next day, I'm on a plane going to LA, rehearsing at the TV show to play the couple new songs with the Impressions, wearing a tuxedo and a tie. So after we did all these LA gigs and we killed them, we just totally killed them. And, all my friends were like, wow, you're with the Impressions. And then we wound up going back to Chicago after that. And I wound up staying in Stony Island Motel, living down the street from Curtom Records as we re-recorded all the Impressions music so Curtis could own his own masters. Oh. Johnny Pate came in town. We recorded with whole orchestra at Audio Finishers and at a couple Universal Studios there in Chicago. And it was me, Lucky Scott, Donny Hathaway. Donny Hathaway was doing 5 stair steps. He was the arranger basically for Curtom and doing a lot of stuff. What happens is going to LA was great. Going to Chicago, Curtis was regrouping, but yet at the same time he worked with Henry Wynn and a couple promoters, Teddy Powell out of New York and Henry Wynn out of Atlanta. And basically in between recording and playing with Curtis there, developing new things, Donnie was less a factor playing with Curtis, and it was just Melvin on keyboards. And Fuzzy left, and then it was just Sonny Forrest on guitar and Lucky Scott on bass. That's the guy who did Superfly and Freddie's.
Yeah, man.
Oh man, I was grooving. But when I moved to Chicago, that's when I meet Gene Barge. That's when I meet Tom 84. That's when I meet Leo Graham, who was producing the Manhattan. That's when I meet Bruce Swedeen. That's when I meet Richard Evans. That's when I meet Chuck Jackson and Marvin Yancey, Terry Collier, Dick Rudolph and Minnie Riperton, Sidney Barnes, Rotary Connection, Shy Lights, Jerry Butler's Writers Workshop, Billy Butler, all of these people. That's Chicago, just like bam. It was a whole nother culture. It was totally different, and a lot of places to play. The Burning Spear and all these Quiet Nights Blues Club, and there was just a lot of things going on. And what happened in Chicago is by playing with the Impressions, I'm on tour with every act you can imagine that I hadn't already seen or played with earlier as just a road musician, playing with different groups. Now here I am with Curtis, and he's doing shows as the headliner all over the place, like Cobo Hall in Detroit, with all these top acts, and even Parliament. Before it was Parliament Funkadelic, and they were wearing matching suits.
Oh,
George Clinton had a do and wore a purple suit.
you know what? Penny Ford told me about that. She said her brother hired George Clinton to do the group, and he had the pompadour and all of that. Oh my Lord! Oh
I think George was a barber too.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's something to do with a hair salon. I can't remember, because we talked about that a long time ago when Bernie Worrell and Tiki were still alive, and Eddie Hazlett. Those were some serious musicians who were with Funkadelic early on. Tiki, the original drummer, passed away, and Eddie passed away after he got out of prison. Back out of prison, I think he went in for drugs.
Oh my goodness! And
the drummer who took Tiki's place was Jerome Braley. Now, Jerome Braley, I knew from doing 90-day tours of one-nighters with the Impressions. He was a drummer for the Five Stairsteps.
No.
And before Jerome played with the Five Stairsteps, he played with the Chambers Brothers. Remember that record, Time? Time? Clicking the cowbell?
Yes.
Chambers Brothers. Okay, he played with them. And before that, he played with Al Johnson, a group called the Unifics out of Washington, D.C. And when the Impressions would play the Carter Baron, like I told you before, Roberta Flack opened the show. The Unifics headlined the show because they had a top record. So I've been knowing Jerome since 1968 from the Carter Baron in D.C. Up through the Chambers Brothers, the Five Stairsteps, into the Funkadelic.
Oh my Lord.
And then Rufus, when we were in Rufus, we were the first group that we got the Funkadelic to open all of quite a bit of our shows.
Really?
Yeah, we got the Commodores to leave Tuskegee. We had them open some shows. We wound up getting DJ Rogers open up for the 3 days we headlined Madison Square Garden. We packed it. We sold it out all 3 nights. We're the only other group to play Shea Stadium other than the Beatles.
Really?
Yeah, Bob Ellis, our manager, got us that gig. He also got us the tour with the Rolling Stones and with the Who. And also we opened for Elton John at Wembley for 150,000 people.
What?
Oh man, it was crazy. Oh yeah, don't get me started, because I know too much stuff. I'll start diverting. Let me come back to what you asked. Okay, so we were with the Impressions, right? So finally, I moved to Chicago. I play with them, get exposed to many things. Curtis is doing more recording. We even demoed Patti LaBelle. We demoed some other folks who he was thinking about releasing. At the time, he was distributed by Buddha Records, which we talked about was Neil Bogart.
Yeah, Neil Bogart.
And Cecil Holmes worked for Neil Bogart, very famous black A&R man. And then Curtis' partner was Eddie Thomas, wonderful man, taught me a lot about some music business. I think he'd been in promotions. And as I told you before, Curtis and Eddie were instrumental in helping Don Cornelius not only get his UHF show there in Chicago, but encouraged him, and I think gave him some backing when he moved to LA to do Soul Train. So black people have been helping each other in quite a few circles and been unadvertised. Jerry Butler helped more people than you'll ever know, as far as through his writer's workshop and bringing people into his band and showcasing them. And he had no qualms about being the headliner. Even if he was the headliner on a show and somebody had to catch a plane, he would go. He would change the order just to accommodate people. this was very kind and still is great man,
Oh,
Jerry Butler. I can't speak any higher of him than like same level as my dad. I
yeah.
learned so much from Jerry, not only poise, but the way he treated people
Hmm.
and the way he treated his own family,
Hmm.
and he just had class. He
Oh,
just straight up class, and he always got active people to be in the band because he was the Iceman. He didn't move.
that's right.
He
That's
always got everybody else was animated. Okay. And as I told you, when I joined Jerry, which was after the Impressions,
uh,
I told you who the background singers were when I flew to New York to rehearse with the band,
yeah.
Patti LaBelle and the Bluebells. So my first gig with Jerry was not just with Jerry, but Patti LaBelle and the Bluebells were the background singers.
Oh, my
Okay,
Lord.
Boogie Bowles was the band leader. Robert Boogie Bowles has been with Smokey Robinson for
Yeah,
30, 40 years.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, he had Dave Green,
Mhm.
excellent bassist, Bernard Williams on percussion and vibes and bells,
Mhm.
Arthur King, who'd been with the Delphonics, played
Uh-huh.
keyboard,
Mhm.
and myself on drums. And whenever we do a large auditorium, he'd hire six horns. You know,
Uh-huh.
he'd make it a larger band. Whenever it was a larger venue and it wasn't a club,
Mhm.
he'd hire a larger band. And we played in tuxedos every night and read from charts. So
Oh.
I left the Impressions because Curtis wanted me to move to Atlanta.
Mhm.
He was going solo. He had picked Leroy Hudson to take his place. Leroy
Wow.
Hudson I know from Howard because he graduated with Donny Hathaway. They went to school together.
Really?
Yes, and the group I told you that Jerome Braley played in Washington, D.C.,
Uh-huh.
called the Unifics.
Uh-huh.
Unifics had a big hit. Well, it was produced by Donny Hathaway when he was going to Howard.
What?
Yeah. Yep. And
What?
you know who Donnie would break his neck to go get coffee for?
Who?
Well, Charles Stepney.
No.
Donnie and most of us in Chicago, we revered James Mack,
Mhm.
Charles Stepney. There was a couple people in town that were like our icons.
Uh-huh.
Charles Stepney is responsible for the voicings, the sound, and the vibe of Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Yes, yes,
and
yes,
and
yes.
also a group called the Pharaohs,
Mhm.
which used to, be at was it the Regal? I forget which theater. They turned it to like a community center. Pete
Mhm.
Cozy, the guitarist that had played with Miles Davis,
Yes.
a lot of underground musicians, and wound up with the Pharaohs. A friend of mine named Durf Reclaw too.
Uh-huh.
Durf Reclaw is Fred Walker backwards, but anyway. No, but Durf's my brother. But Durf was in the Pharaohs. A lot of
Uh-huh.
great musicians we'd go see in Chicago. Well, when Maurice reformed the
Mhm.
first group with Alexander Thomas on trombone,
Uh-huh.
okay, Alexander and I went to LA High together.
What?
Jessica Cleaves sang with Maurice. Jessica Cleaves is the vocalist who from there went to Friends of Distinction.
What?
LA High. Al
What?
McKay, the guitarist with Earth, Wind, and Fire. LA High.
What you say?
It was Al McKay and the Turbans, won every contest at school and KHJ battling the bands when I was in high school.
Oh.
He was in band, I was in orchestra. Okay. So Harold Land Jr., his father, Harold Land Sr., played with Clifford Brown, LA High.
Oh.
Carl Randall, Ted Murdoch played with Ray Charles
Yeah.
up till the day he passed, LA High.
LA High.
Uh, uh, there was Leslie Drayton, trumpet player from LA High, was Marvin Gaye's band director.
You were blowing my mind. You
All
were
right.
blowing my mind.
Yeah, but see, my school, my relatives,
Mhm.
my environment, it was all connected to music, expression, creativity,
Mhm.
and as I told you before, things that would save our lives.
Mhm.
Because we've been through a lot of shit between
Yeah.
there and here.
Yeah.
Okay, so all of these things, even if I pile them up and they sound great and they're enlightening, they were also necessary
Mhm.
and therapeutic. And at times I'll listen to Donnie. I'm still mad at him. I still weep when I hear his voice.
Yeah.
I I can't have it. When I listen to Minnie, I do the same
Yeah.
because I didn't want them to go,
Yeah. Mm.
and it's just a crazy thing. It's like Walter Jackson.
Mhm.
Walter Jackson was crippled,
Mhm.
and Walter would sing, and sometimes a little trick of his is that on his crutches,
Uh-huh.
he'd sing a song, and then he'd fall on his knees from his crutches, and the women would go nuts.
Whoa.
Walter Jackson. He was his voice, the sound of his voice, and the women loved this guy.
Oh,
I was able to see all of that and see
yeah.
Solomon Burke perform. I wound up playing with Etta James at the Vine Street Bar and Grill with Smitty Smith on keyboard, Reggie McBride on bass, which had been with Rare Earth. Leo Nocentelli from the Meters
Yeah.
was the guitar player. Uh,
Uh-huh.
uh, what was Bobby's name? The saxophone player from Frank Zappa. Uh,
Yeah.
Jesus, the guitar player from Paul McCartney.
Oh.
We were all in Etta's band. She didn't pay us no money. We play for Etta for free. She'd pay us out of her bra. The money would be damp. I said, woman, you got to put this shit in a bag, okay? Dry this shit off. I don't want no wet money. So anyway, so Etta was funny. We played with Etta, but all of these experiences, even though they span a long point of years, the only things that were odd about them, you'd have to make yourself odd. If
Yeah.
if you were true to why you did it and you coveted your culture, it took care of you. If
Yeah.
not financially, at least spiritually or emotionally.
Right. Right.
So that's a very important point because the only reason I'm well or look like I look is because of how I feel.
Yeah.
And I found that 80% of what we do is our attitude, especially as a drummer. If the drummer is depressed, the gig's not going to go that great.
Right.
That's,
Right.
in other words, I've always had to be a spark plug.
Mhm.
So it's funny because even when people were doing drugs, they would do downers, right? They
Mhm.
they'd second all and smoking weed and drinking syrup. They couldn't afford dope, so they drink cough syrup out on the road.
What?
Oh yeah, they drink Romal RCF. And that was hallucinogenic. They drink Robitussin most of the time because it had opiates in it.
That's right.
Okay, so everybody's going down, and for me, I'm Zippy the Pinhead. I don't want to go down.
Right.
So when I wound up at one time in my life doing cocaine, it was counterproductive because I was already there.
Uh-huh.
So all I did was just cancel myself out. It was totally crazy. But after the impressions, when I didn't move to Atlanta with Curtis,
Uh-huh.
okay, Cat, sorry you can't go.
Oh my
Yeah,
God.
we used to call him Bucky Beaver. He hated it, but he would laugh. But Curtis was funny. And on those tours, it was a funky tour buses, that the bus driver didn't want to stop for pee breaks or, the 5 stair steps are in the back of the bus peeing in a coffee can. It's like
Yeah.
people are getting sick because of the fumes. The Impressions drive and a couple other acts drive past us in their Fleetwood Brohams.
Uh-huh.
So the
Uh-huh.
only way you could ride better if you wanted to work with the Impressions, you could ride in the car with them, but you had to drive.
Ah.
So I got a lot of miles on me, not wanting to be on that bus by driving a damn Cadillac, okay,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
and truck stop food,
Uh-huh.
going
Duckies.
back and forth. And what's funny is they start calling me the map because everywhere we go, I knew where the municipal auditorium was, and they said, "How do you know this?" My memory from childhood.
Yeah.
My father had been in the same places.
Oh.
So they start calling me the map. So in other words, everybody always asked, well, where are we going?
And you know what, Andre? How did that feel? I mean, okay, you just hit on something. You were there with your dad
Yeah.
as he played, and now you're coming back as a musician to the same arenas.
Yes.
How did that feel? Without going back to what your dad said, but
I got you.
How did that?
Re- it felt different at different times.
Mhm,
You know, it if it was a time that I missed my parents,
mhm,
then it had a different significance to me,
mm,
or it brought back those earlier times.
mhm.
And those earlier times where there was less responsibility involved
Right,
because you're
right.
a child and you're being cared for.
Mhm,
Okay, to be there now as an adult and understand why your father did or said certain things, because
mhm,
now you're going through exactly the same thing.
mhm.
And I, so many times I tip my hat to my parents,
Yeah.
unspoken and in silence,
Uh-huh.
but done because I appreciated the fact of what they went through in order to get me strong enough to walk on two legs.
Mm. And
And
stand where they stood.
yes,
That right there.
and but not the reverence wasn't just for them. It was for it, all of it,
Mhm,
and for them to have got me into something that I could see kind of how they were put together from seeing what I received from this creative aspect of us as people.
mhm, mhm.
And but it also made me think more about what would have happened to us if we'd been encouraged or been on an even playing field
Mhm,
as a civilization, as
mhm.
opposed to having to always come through something.
Right.
Because these white folks with PTSD right now, if they really want to learn how to endure, you need to go get you a black neighbor.
Okay.
Okay, and
Okay.
say, can I buy you coffee and can I talk to you?
Mhm.
Because we'll tell you how, you
That's
know.
right.
And all I can remember that in the tons of garbage, soul food, and pig guts that
Mhm.
we season because that's all we got.
Right.
We've always made a new suit out of some bullshit.
Yeah.
So what it's done is it's given me another kind of pride. When my parents were married in 1940, what they were 46 or 47,
Mhm,
uh, their mixed marriage in the majority of states that my dad had to travel through was against the law.
mhm.
Um, they went through some changes where, as far as my father was concerned, that's why I sent you a couple of those pictures where it
Yeah.
shows him in the white tux with
Yeah.
his little band from school.
Mhm.
For some reason in Grand Rapids, Michigan, the schools were in, they were, he went to an integrated high school,
Mhm.
which it wasn't separate because my mom sang there at the school and he was the top trumpet player. So when he left and went in the army and got out, he came back looking for her.
Oh,
So
wow.
basically, it's two musicians who hooked up. They made a band and had a couple kids. Okay.
You know what? That really sums it
Well,
up.
my mother used to get mad at my father and say that he didn't use his whiteness to our family's advantage all the time.
Mhm, mhm,
And he would get upset and say, I thought I was just a man. He said, because
mhm,
when I married you, I became persona non grata to my family and to my neighborhood and
mm,
to all the white folks that were supposed to be where I came from.
mhm,
So he
mhm,
said, I've had to find a new place to stand. And he said, the only place to stand is in the light. And so
mhm,
he said, we're going to raise our children as children of the world, not just of the neighborhood.
mm,
So they made it a point to cram National Geographic and travel and critical thinking in our family's existence
mhm,
on purpose. He
mhm.
always equated it to being dropped somewhere like a paratrooper.
Uh-huh.
That
Uh,
no matter where you go, home is where you're standing. It's in your pocket.
mm,
It's not a house you go to. It's not the fact you've had the same phone number for 10 years.
mhm,
He said it's inside you. And he said, Black people won't like you because they'll think you think you're better because you're light.
mm,
He said,
mm,
he said, that is a problem from being colonized. He said, that's the game they play.
mm,
And he said, white folks won't like you because you don't play basketball and you don't fit any of the stereotypes of what they think a Black person's supposed to be.
mm.
And then he'd say, and next time you go to the best bus stop and a little boy asks you if your mother's your maid, he said you smack him in the mouth.
Mhm. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Well, so that's what I came up under. So that was even different than what I would just call falling into music. It was a lot of things wrapped together. It was like goulash.
Mhm.
And you spend some of your adult life trying to undo some of the things that don't necessarily have to be connected at this point.
Mhm.
Because when you come to a certain enlightenment, certain foundations you use to arrive at that have either shifted or changed. When people want to run back to middle ground, okay, with what they deem to be safety,
Mhm.
it doesn't exist because the position is no longer in the same place. Anytime you move something slightly to the right or to the left, the middle changes.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
So the same in music, the same in our human existence.
Mhm.
And what we want sometimes is to be able to sit and fart in the couch and nothing changes. And that's not how it goes because,
Right.
like my dad said, every second you live, you die. So that means it's a constant state of flux. This existence lasts that long.
Mhm.
And so in order for it to be relevant, it's not what other people tell me that I'm successful. That means that I hold them as the pinnacle of the person who I would listen to tell me it's relevant or not. That's
Right.
bullshit.
Uh-huh.
So ultimately, I have to figure that out. If
Mhm.
somebody comes to me and says, Andre, you're the reason I play drums today. I heard that solo you did on that record. And I know inside that that was a terrible solo that I did. Then
Mhm.
I'm kind and I say, well, I'm so glad that you play and I'm glad you come into your own instead of saying, you know what, that solo was terrible and I don't know why the hell you listened to it. So in other words, I have to become my judge. When I hear the playback, you don't have to tell me what I'm wrong. I'm self-correcting.
Uh-huh.
And that's the better musicians, whether it's Ray Parker Jr. or whether it's Herbie Hancock. It's just like what Herbie talked about. He played a wrong note during one of Miles' solos,
Mhm.
and he knew Miles was going to cuss him out after the gig. He said what Miles did is he took that note and changed his note and went off.
Okay.
In other words, it was like a ballet dance. He caught
Mhm.
him. It's like the catcher of the dancer.
Mhm.
That's what I am as a producer.
Mm.
I have to make sure I'm there,
Yeah.
okay, to finish it off because the point is neither of us. The point is the completion of what we're doing.
Mhm.
That's the same with our civilization. We kept trying to figure out what are we going to be? What am I going to be like? It's what are we going to be like?
Right.
Okay, because humanity is not that smart. To me, it's Fred Flintstone with a tie on. It's some dumb things going on. So in music, the only way I've been able to be successful is not, regardless of the politics I know,
Right.
regardless of how I speak with people or who likes me, who doesn't. It's content.
Mhm.
Some of the content I've done, people have liked, has struck a chord, which means the same that's in me is in you, and the thread connects us.
Yes.
So what
Mm.
I try to do is to covet the thread,
Mhm.
and the thread is our humanity.
Ah.
So that's the best way that I can approach it. So when you come in the door and say, I want to do this song,
Mhm.
I want to do this thing, the first thing out of my mouth is not an opinion. My first thing is like, I want to just hear it. I'm a listener first.
Uh-huh.
How does it strike me? How does it affect me? I still listen to Gate of Dreams by Klaus Oberman. It's an instrumental album done from a man famous arranger who does string arrangements.
Mhm.
Klaus Oberman may have done early Wes Montgomery, um, Bill Evans.
Mhm.
Uh, he's done quite a few things. But he did an album called Gate of Dreams. That's an instrumental album that, matter of fact, Tommy LaPuma produced and Al Schmidt was the engineer.
Oh.
Joe Samples playing piano. Uh,
Oh.
Michael Brecker
Mhm.
playing on it. George Benson's guitar. It's wonderful. And it's full orchestra. And there's a certain sections that will come and I'll listen to it. And it gets to this one point, and when it gets to that place, it's like my father's in the room.
Oh my God.
And it's like it takes me to this place and I begin to weep because I miss him so.
Yeah.
But it speaks to me.
Mhm.
And the only way things can speak to you is you have to let yourself go.
Yeah.
You have to be vulnerable in order for it to be able to affect you, for the spirit to do its work.
Right.
whether it's the spirit of Kwame Nkrumah, or wherever it's coming from. There's all kinds of words for God, and I think the African, their women and their fruits, plants, and the sun and the wind, that was their gods. So whatever it is that lets you know that you are part of something bigger, you have to let it go.
So you touched upon something. So when you are there to produce a song, the artist comes in. Do you listen to that artist sing the song before you start arranging it, and just making it your song for them, or do you make it the song for? How do you make it?
First of all, if it's a saxophone player or if it's a singer, who's telling the story? What is this about? Okay, a lot of people turn the production up, the track. The track is not telling the story. The track is supposed to be the accompaniment to the story. Okay, so in other words, if you come into me and you're singing, it's either in terms of dress or a bed to lie in or something that is inclusive of giving you comfort or following you. And I learned that from my mother, because when I would follow her and play with her, okay, the art of accompaniment is the same as the man who caught the ballet dancer. Same with when you see the ice skaters. Okay, in other words, it's like a trust to be able to close your eyes and fall backwards and know someone will catch you. That's what I have to provide, and have to know that after we've left each other, that it's more solidified, at least on tape or through song, what you feel or what you were trying to express. And it's not that Andre told me what to say. It's that, what's that old commercial? It's shake and bake and I helped.
Yes.
Even if I have been instrumental in adding more of the ideas, or somebody reached an impasse and they needed some inspiration, it doesn't matter the degree. It doesn't matter what the percentage is. What matters is when it's finished, is it whole? It's just like listening to a mix, or to listen to a Gladys Knight record, which I had totally remixed, that they had the vocals too low. And so they were selling their production technique, but the music wasn't written to stand alone. They were turning up something which was a dress with no one in it. So personality lasts longer than production technique. The unforgettable stuff, I went through those songs and threw out all the corny chords and all the things that would date it, like a certain line that said, no, they played that shit in the 50s. No, instead just took what the essence of it was, and that's what we ran with. On Unforgettable, the single, I basically prepared it. Al Schmidt and I got the tapes from Capitol and soloed out the lead vocals to give to David Foster. At the time, David Foster had done Voices That Care. It was the thing he put together for the Desert Storm.
Right.
And in the sessions that he did a few tunes on the first album. No offense to David, but the reason I involved David is because I wanted a well-known pop producer to be involved in an album that I didn't want somebody to take only as jazz. And not only that, but those songs on Unforgettable, people call it jazz. That wasn't a jazz album. Those were pop tunes of their day. Those weren't jazz tunes. Take a Look had more jazz tunes on it. Okay. So what happens is David, I said, I want you to do the single Unforgettable. And he looked at me, it's like, well, why are you giving it to me? Why don't you do it? I had just done it on Diane Schure's album. And my contract says I got to wait for a year or more before I can record that song again on someone else. In other words, you can't do this for Barbra Streisand and then walk down the street and do the same song as somebody else. They don't want you to do that. So I gave it to David, but Al and I prepared it, and mainly Al, basically to prepare David for it. But he was busy doing press conferences in the green room.
Uh-huh.
And Natalie started to get a little pissed.
Uh-huh.
Well, because it's like we're doing my record and like
Right.
so David got mad at us towards the end because me and Tommy and Al kind of rode around that and made sure that got kind of done a certain way. And also, if you notice, there's bass leakage in her father's vocal.
Uh-huh.
Because now everybody does things where if you solo the track, you don't hear anything else.
Mm-hmm.
But in the old days, there was leakage. Other instruments would leak into your microphone.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So what happens is in the soloed vocal mic, there was an upright bass in it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you can't tell the difference in Unforgettable where the old bass is
Mm-hmm.
and where the new one begins.
Right.
That's Al Schmidt. That's Al. Okay, and we had to arrange the song a certain way because the way that the samples ran,
Mm-hmm.
you had to make it a certain way to be uniform or else it wouldn't make any sense. So that kind of locked in how it was going to be arranged.
Mm-hmm.
So in essence, as far as I'm concerned, we all helped prep for David.
Oh.
And David did a good job finishing. The only thing I was in disagreement with is that he wanted Umberto Gartica, to mix the stuff that he did.
Uh-huh.
And Tommy and I were pretty adamant that we wanted Al Schmidt to mix the whole thing because that was a thread that runs through it.
Mm-hmm.
Natalie's voice runs through it. It's just like Marvin Gaye, what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
There's not too many different people who mix those songs.
Mm-hmm.
Continuity comes from personage. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So we knew Al was the guy to do the whole thing.
Right.
But other than that, I thought David did a good job, especially in an idiom that he didn't work in every day.
Mm-hmm.
But it also worked too for people to play that as the only single that here's this pop producer, David Foster, with this song Unforgettable. So in essence, I'm very grateful to him, but he got pimped a little bit.
Yeah.
No, but it's true. It's true.
Yeah.
But he never regretted it. He never said anything about it. But David did a great job as far as I'm concerned.
And you won a Grammy for it. So
well, Tommy was jamming, but Tommy, he was a trooper. Tommy was to me less a musical producer. What Tommy had was good taste.
Mm-hmm.
And he would pick the right people to put in a room together, and he would make that environment.
Uh-huh.
And basically, then he would choose from what they did. I'm a different kind of producer. I'll tell you exactly what I need based upon what I just heard the vocalist do.
Okay, how do you prep for that? So that's what I'm trying to understand is when you're going to be working with this artist, you know what they are capable of doing.
Yes.
And they're coming in. You have these songs that they're going to sing. What do you do from that?
It's like a crash course in getting to know somebody.
Mm-hmm.
I have to know them a little bit emotionally. Also, you have to have someone trust you, because when they trust you, they show you the soft part. Okay. And they show you their vulnerabilities, and people even try things. Sometimes people don't try things if they feel they're being judged. They'll stick to the format. Or my whole thing is, how do you feel today? If you feel good today, how do you want this to go? In other words, I need your input. If you just got me here to tell you what to do, I'm not going to do it. Okay. I'm not singing on this record. You are. The instrument, you are the instrument. Okay, so what I try to do is shape the record around the person, because personality, as I said before, lasts longer than production technique. No matter how good a producer I am, it's the storyteller that winds up being the focal point. So in other words, I arrange the music around the vocal. So like I said before, if you close your eyes and fall backwards, it will catch you.
Right.
You're not hitting the concrete nowhere. So in essence, that's what I have to do. But you heard when I talked to you about what I went through with Nina. It's like a quick study in positive energy. and to find a way to circumvent those negative things or what's been combined in one's personality that they have to pull from. Sometimes it's garbage to give them inspiration to go through a certain process. Sometimes they think they need a certain thing to go through a process. I show them other ways to 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 reach that plateau without dragging all the other stuff along.
Okay.
So hopefully after we finish working together, it's also been enlightening too, in that I do as much teaching as I do producing. And I want you to be able to make decisions too, and the input on you since you are the instrument. And that worked so well with Natalie. That girl, no one's sang like that, know exactly the pacing of the note and how long to lay it across the bar. It's like it's like she's went right there. Her father was in the room. He was like, "Yes, girl, that's the way you do it."
Yeah.
It's like she had other issues when the tape was done. Worried about how do you like you? What do I look like? And there's all kinds of other issues going on. Plus, Natalie never came out the fact that she was bisexual, and that for Black entertainers seemed to have been a problem, or to be gay or anything else. The same with all the subterfuge with Whitney and a bunch of other folks that I knew personally. It's too many things knocking at your door. You need to clean house, and people were still scared, even through the '90s about being things totally. But you see, my problem too is that I should have just done the records. Instead, we were married. So not only was the session, when the session was over, it wasn't over.
Right, because you have to go
I'm going home to eat dinner. She's still talking about the session. So I'm like, oh shit. And then not only that, but then when the other thing popped up, as far as that sexual routine, it's like, I'm just a simple Baptist boy. I didn't sign up for that. I didn't know what that was about. And it never properly got explained to me. Instead, it was like something that leaked through a hole in the ceiling and fell on your head. And that was problematic, especially too because I had children who already had a mom and were raised in a certain environment. And the environment that Natalie would let through the door was different than the one that I would, as far as the kinds of people and the things that were done and said. And when you live together, there has to be some kind of compromise. And if people keep whispering in your ear that you're the shit, and you shouldn't have to worry about that. Plus, any other relationship she had, she was basically running it. Well, I'm an alpha male.
Right.
So in other words, I'm going to, and then when she found out that as a producer I made money, she started ordering shit like Fendi furs and, all those dresses you saw her in. I had those handmade by the head seamstress we stole from Bob Mackey. We paid him to make the dresses. And also some of those designs were unique only to Natalie, not to be repeated again. And the dress that she wore the night she opened the Hollywood Bowl was from a movie that Lana Turner was in.
Oh my Lord.
We had a friend put us in contact with Lana Turner. Lana Turner not only remembered the dress, I think girlfriend stole it, or at least had the dimensions for it. We wound up having that dress recreated, and then invited Lana Turner to sit in the front row the night she opened at Hollywood Bowl.
What you say?
Yeah, but I had that dress made. I didn't know the dresses, $8,000, $12,000. Those dresses, I could have sent more kids to college off of this price of those dresses. But also, too, I think the other men that she'd been with, just financially, may have been a different level. And then when she found out that I could kind of hang out, oh, you fly first class too. And I'm like, yeah, because, I don't want to be under the plane. So I did that for too many years. So anyway, so she started thinking that was cool. But there are times that it got distant, and those only happened when she went out on the road. And sometimes she would ask for me to come out on the road with her, and it got harder when I took the job as senior VP at MCA.
Right.
I was there from 8 in the morning till midnight or 1 in the morning every night because it wound up being more administration than actual music.
Yeah.
And flying back and forth to argue with Bert Padell behind the improper handling of Rakim's money. And Big Daddy Kane wanted to go in the studio that night, but I couldn't get the POs for it. And, Bell Biv DeVoe's manager was going to come get me because I stopped the funds. They couldn't just go in the studio. They had to submit proper budget. It had to be a fund and a PO number and not a fund. I mean, through all kinds of stuff, but I ran that department like I ran my own production company. That's all I did. And then I became good friends with Lou Wasserman, the president of
Hey, Lou, yes.
He was a Natalie and Nat King Cole fan. So I'd go in the executive lunchroom at Universal. And the executives would all be around the perimeter. Right in the middle, by himself, looked lonely. It was Lou Wasserman with those cool-ass Aristotle Onassis glasses.
Yes.
He was always sharp as a tack with a thin tie. And one day I came by and I asked, do you mind if I sit with you? And the look on his face was like, oh shit, finally somebody's gonna sit with me. They were scared of him.
Really?
Yeah, but I sat with him.
Sweet.
I know he was. Not in business, he wasn't sweet. But as a person, he was sweet.
Yes.
So I sat there and but also too, I knew he was a fan.
Yeah.
And recently that same month, the head of administration wouldn't let me buy new computers for my department because the last person that had worked there apparently had absconded with some papers or some things and had, not spent money correctly. So that's when, they constantly looking at Black people.
Yeah, that's the first thing that just popped in my mind.
Well, because they couldn't complain when Gerald Busby was there. But when Gerald Busby was going to go up on charges for payola, him and the guy who was running the MCA at the time, I forget the little short guy, the manager. It was Gerald Busby and what's his name? Anyway, what had happened is Joe Isgro, the head of promotions, independent promotions, he's the one who took the hit and went to prison for them. And
really?
Gerald wound up with Motown Records because Universal bought them.
Yeah.
Okay. And then Irving Azoff wound up with his own record label after that. So Azoff, Azoff goes in and asks Gerald what he needs. And Gerald says, I need my records on the radio. So Azoff, whether this is rumor or true, I don't know if I'll get sued for it, contacts Joe Isgro, who is a legitimate promotional man. And what had happened is, through the course of Ben's the course of mighty rivers and Ben Steele in his bare hands, look up in the sky, it's a plane, it's Superman. Anyway, goes and does his thing, and there was some improprieties in it. But MCA was getting all their records played. So instead of Gerald didn't take the hit, neither did Isgro. Neither did Azoff. So Azoff splits. Gerald goes and they put him over at Motown to run Motown, and also make a deal with him for distribution, how it's supposed to be done. And then they bring in Raoul Roach, who'd been working for Quincy. Raoul's gone just like that, because that's who called me at Quest Records to produce Milt Jackson from the Jazz Quartet. Okay. I go with Raoul, he sends me to New York, I go meet with Milt Jackson at a hotel. Okay, and because I got a suit and tie on, Milt thinks I'm from the record company because nobody from the record company showed up. I called back to the record company and called Joanne Tamanaga, who was the general manager at the time. And she said, Raoul no longer works here. He's gone to MCA as VP of A&R. So I'm like, the guy who called me to come do this just left.
Yeah.
So she talks to Quincy. Quincy talks to me. Quincy hires me as vice president of Quest Records. Go ahead, do a good job with Milt, because he was busy doing something else. Quincy was always busy doing a lot of stuff. I remember having to go to the Montreux Jazz Festival and help over there because he was, guest conductor for the weekends and the whole routine. Anyway, by the time I get to MCA, they were gun shy of Black people. Okay, so they weren't going to let me have computers. They were going to give me 6 months. What do you call that period? That 6 months
trial period,
probationary period. And I went to the guy and I said, well, can I bring my own computers then? Because I need for the department to run at least as smoothly as my own independent production company does.
Right.
Then they had just come out with the big Apple laptop, which must have been thick thing. And this is when we were still putting the phone or the button into the phone to get online that way. Remember that sound that AOL used to make?
Yes.
So, but I was ahead of the curve because I already had that stuff and I was already emailing people. None of the people at MCA in '93 emailed anybody anything.
Really?
Barely any of the departments had computers. Okay, so when I asked for a computer, everything was on paper. Files in the paper. When I went to the filing cabinets to review all the contracts, Lowell Silas had taken them.
No.
Yeah, because he ran the department with Gerald Busby, and then when he went and formed his own label, it was up in the same building. Well, the white boys were scared to ask him to get the papers back.
No.
I had to redo 75% of the contracts into summaries because when a manager calls you, you have to know all the terms because they're asking you to spin.
Yes.
I took 11 of their lawyers, okay, found a girl who worked for a company that did programming and knew exactly what to do with the computer. We reformatted. I refiled the whole department. Do you know how hard that was?
Oh my God.
So after a while, instead of having papers in a file, there was papers in a file plus backup on computer systems.
Yeah, because you don't want anybody. Oh my God.
So I went to a place called Land Sharks in Anaheim, California. When the guy okayed for me to bring in my own computers, I think he thought I meant my laptop. I bought 6 Centrus 650 computers. I spent $50,000 in an afternoon. I bought the computers. I bought backup. I had someone to come in to train my people. I had remote access, which meant I could take my laptop, go to New York, get on the phone, check the files that they left me, come back on the red eye, come back for a meeting on Monday morning and be up to speed with the department. Okay. Then I had to run the New York office as well.
Oh my goodness.
So the New York office, the girl running it was Andre Harrell's girlfriend, who he quit. She wasn't used to having someone over her, okay, especially someone she didn't know. So I had to let her go, and I told them to take all the tapes away. Well, the lady didn't believe me, who ran the New York office. I said, that these things belong to us. You need to hold these in. And when I let the lady go, she took the master with her of an artist she was working with.
What?
Yeah, but see, people, they listened after that, okay?
Yes, okay.
So I said, I don't know what y'all doing here, but here's the deal, just common sense. A lot of stuff didn't get done because they just didn't use common sense.
Right.
Or you throw 10 against the wall and see what sticks, and then you run to it and throw money at it, okay? That's called reactionary marketing. Can you control the budget of a reaction?
No, you cannot. No, you can't.
How can you predict what your departmental costs will be when you're playing Russian roulette like that?
Right.
And it also means that a bunch of records released, they didn't get promoted properly because there was no confidence behind them because the people who picked them didn't know their asses from a hole in the ground.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a short minute too where I was running both A&R departments, the pop and the urban. And my boss was Ernie Singleton. I think they thought by hiring Ernie, they were getting part of Gerald Busby back. But Gerald was old school where you didn't know anything about what Gerald was doing. All you knew is whatever he had you doing in your department. So when they got the guy thinking that they're getting Gerald, all they got was his pinky finger. Okay, but that's how you protected your job. Where I'm a different leader. To me, everyone in the department has to know what I know, because if one falls, the other picks up.
Right, right.
And that way, you don't wind up prematurely sending an artist to death.
Yes, yes.
And what happens when you make mistakes like that? You kill our culture.
Yes, you do.
Ruin artists' careers like Jackie McGee and a lot of other people that should have been relevant. The first thing I did when I took over senior of A&R was Ernie Singleton and Richard Palmese. He had me drop 35% of the roster.
Really?
Yeah, but Ernie didn't call anybody. I had to call all the managers and artists. I had an artist's mother call me and plead that the artist not be dropped off the label. I mean, things like that.
Yeah.
And then I changed the department from funds. You don't just send somebody a big check to do a record. You do a PO so you can track the money properly.
Yes, yes.
They called and threatened my life. I won't mention which artists did, but managers and artists called me and said they were going to come to Cali and kill me.
What?
Oh, yeah. And I said, well, I'll meet you at the airport then.
Okay. What?
I said, you must have looked at the wrong picture. Okay, because I got a tie on, but you have no idea who you messing with.
That's right. That's one of them. My mama used to say, you got to bring some to get some.
Right. So I said, do me a favor. This was a New York call made to me. I said, you calling me, huh? And you talking trash, huh? I said, do me a favor. Call LL Cool J. No, better than that. Call Frankie Crocker. Okay, call Teddy Powell and ask him about Andre. Okay, well, that same person that called me back 3 days later and profusely apologized.
I know he did.
Okay,
he did.
Because I'm really sorry, man. I said, dude.
Yeah.
Where I grew up in LA, I went to Fauché Junior High.
You went to Fauché?
I went to Fauché. I fought from my house to school, at school, on the playground, and on the way home.
Oh my God.
I had a fight almost every day I went to school at that school. It was rebel rousers, businessmen. That was the gang things. And then the Slausons were more over on the south side. It was It was all, believe me. So all of my friends in the neighborhood was all gangbangers, with prison tats made with matches. And,
so you had backup. You had backup.
They saw this yellow brother coming in and they figured, this is a little poop butt, just like French people thought I was Algerian or Moroccan.
Yeah.
Until I said motherfucker.
Yeah, until you knew how to pronounce the cuss words, correct?
Right. And then they said, no, he's from the United States. Bonjour, monsieur. Don't mess with me.
Until you prove.
But the whole record company thing was for one reason only. I bumped heads with people who do record company stuff because that's what they always wanted to do.
Right.
That was not a dream of mine. I did record company and got that position so I could use their money to help my friends.
Right.
Because I was spending my own money and going broke with it.
Right.
I can't tell you how many artists that to this day that I had to pay their rents and feed them and do things with them or help them. Just like when I signed Vesta, Vesta owed the government $300 large. So that was the advance I was able to give her.
Yeah.
Okay. It wasn't because the project was worth that. It's because I had enough to do it. And she was iconic enough that if I put out just one good record to break even, that would have justified the existence.
Right.
Because at MCA, I had Patti LaBelle and Gladys there. Okay. So I was able to get them both gold records.
Yes.
I remember All This Love Is Waiting for You, the El DeBarge song. Patti recorded it. Teddy Riley had done the track.
Oh, did
Teddy had a problem with MCA, unbeknownst to me, and wasn't finishing up the project. I fly to Virginia Beach. That little Negro made me wait in his studio for 4 hours before he agreed to see me.
No.
Well, I said, I'm Andre. I'm not just some representative from the record company. I'm
Right,
Dreyfus Records and Tapes here.
right.
So that really bent my nose. And so I just let people know after that. Look,
Mhm.
you want these people's money? I'm not here to stop you from getting money. I'm just here to make sure the paper trail looks all right. Because if it doesn't, they're gonna come get me, say
Right,
that I'm not running it right, and find a reason to close the department down, and you don't have any money.
right, right.
And it means all the stuff you've been stealing and buying cars with,
Mhm.
okay, you got to keep paying for stuff. It's not the ability to buy a house, it's how
Mhm.
long can you pay for the upkeep and
That's
the
right.
property tax.
Mhm.
Okay, so there's more to life than acquisition,
Right.
because
You
the
take to
majority of my friends have acquired rooms and garage and storage bins full of stuff, but
Mhm.
that's all they acquired.
Right.
Keep me liquid, let me be able to move.
Mhm.
I went did a record in Copenhagen last year.
Mhm.
An artist named Cindy Ake. That
Yes.
she's the top jazz vocalist there in
Mhm.
Copenhagen, actually in Denmark. And
Mhm.
I did a 20-piece big band with the DNR, Danish National Radio. They support this 20-piece big band and an orchestra.
Mhm.
And in their facility that they have a television and radio station, they also have a concert hall and recording studio.
Mhm.
These people take care of artistic people.
Yeah.
And I went there and they just killed it. Uh, it was
Mhm.
ridiculous. So I was able to go over there and knock it out. But when I go into a studio, that's like going in my bedroom.
Really?